back to my channel. Well, today I'm back with another Underground Railroad quilt block. Today we're going to work on the Carpenter's wheel. The Carpenter's wheel was first seen in 1825 as far as quilt historians can find. I couldn't find a whole lot of information on this block other than it was a secondary block that just told escapee slaves to travel west, northwest towards Ohio to freedom. And it specifically, with the things I could find, were saying Ohio. So other than that, I didn't find any other significance to this block. So I'm going to dig and do some more research, and if I find any more, I will tell you at the end of this video. But that's all I could find for now. So let's go ahead and get this block made. It's a really pretty block. It is a little more involved than some of the other blocks that we have done, so it's going to take a little bit of time. There's 3 different units you have to make, so we'll make one of each unit together, and then we'll sew the whole block together. So let's get started. So this block is made up of 3 different units. The center is made of a pinwheel, which I did ahead of time. And the only reason I did is because to save a little bit of time, because this is going to be a longer sort of block. Most people have made a pinwheel at home, so I figured that it wouldn't be so hard for you all to figure out. But it needs to be 3.5 inches square after it's trimmed up and everything. So what I did is I used 2 3.5 inch squares. And I did the 4 at a time method, where you sew all the way around the outside of the 2 different colors. You put them right sides together, and then I cut them on the diagonal and got 4 half square triangles, and then I trimmed those half square triangles to 2 inches, put those together, and that made my 3.5 inch square for the center. So that takes care of that one. So there's 2 other units. There's middle units and corner units. So we'll work on the middle unit first. All these fabrics up here are for the corner unit, and these are for the middle units. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create what looks like a square and a square. So we are going to sew these 2 inch squares to a background 3.5 inch square, and I'm going to do 2 at a time. So these 2 colors are the colors that are in my pinwheel, so those ones are going to go down here, and then these are the 2 that match all these other blues, because I used 3 different colored fabrics in one background. So those 2 are going to go next to each other on the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the opposite corners first, press those, and then we'll attach the other 2 corners. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We're just sewing corner to corner on the squares. They're 2 inch squares, again, on a 3.5 inch background square. And you can draw the lines on the back of your squares if you want. I've got seam guide tape here, so I'm not drawing the lines, but if that makes you feel more comfortable and makes your piecing more precise, then go ahead and do that. So I'm just putting the piece under my presser foot and then looking for the line from the seam guide tape and following along, because that line is right down the center from my needle, so I know I'm going right down the center of the square. So now I'm going to grab my scissors. You can do this with a rotary cutter. I'm just going to scissor cut it because it's a little bit quicker on camera, but cut a 1/4 inch away from where you just sewed, and then we're going to press those out away from the middle of the block, and then we're going to do the other corners, the opposite corners. We're basically snowballing this block, or making a square to square. And then I have to put my magic juice on there. You guys know I can't sew without my magic juice. Alright. Coming along with this project, I'm really looking forward to making some more progress on it and getting this done and getting it donated. Okay, so now that those two corners are done, I can finish the last two corners. So I'm just going to do the same thing I just did and add them to each corner. Alright, now I'm going to trim those off. And we'll give those a press. And then there's one more step to this unit, and then this unit will be done, but you do need to make 4 of these. So there's 4 of these units, 4 of the corner units, and just 1 of the center pinwheel units. Just going to do 1 each with you today. Let you do the other 3, and then we'll put the whole block together. Alright. Give this guy a press. Alright. Alright, now we're going to add this 2" by, I believe it's 3.5, yep, 2" by 3.5" rectangle to the top of this unit. And by the top, I mean the side with the same 2 colors, or these colors here, not the ones that match the pinwheel, but the other 2 colors. It's not really 2 different colors, it's the same colors, but that's what I'm calling the top. So I'm going to add this little 2" by 3.5" rectangle right here, and I'm going to sew it from the bottom side, so that way we can watch as it goes across where the flying geese, or where this the thread cross, where it kind of looks like a flying geese, so we don't lose our point there on the inside. So what you do when you sew this, you sew your 1/4" seam, but when you get to that point, make sure you're just a smidge, the tiniest bit, like 1 thread over, and you'll keep your point every time. Okay, we open it up and the point is there, which is good. And I'm just going to give this a press. And then we can set that aside for now. And like I said, you should have 4 of these. Alright. Now we're going to do the corner, or make the corner units. So the corner units are made of 2 flying geese. I already made 1 flying geese just to make it quicker. So we're going to turn this into a flying geese. This is also a 2" by 3.5" rectangle and 2 2" squares. And then the corner is also made of a 2" by 3.5" rectangle of the blue, and a background square, and another square of blue, which is 2". These are both 2", and then lastly another 2" square. So we'll get to all this in just a minute, but let's go ahead and make the flying geese here. So we just lay our square on top of our rectangle, sew corner to corner. Again, if you want to mark it with a marking tool, you can. It's such a small piece of fabric, it's only 2 inches, you can probably eyeball it. Alright, give that a press. And then we'll do the other side. Same thing, we're going to just sew corner to corner, making sure that when we fold this down that it looks like this. All right. And I like to finger press them to make them go the way I want. Especially when you're starting to get layers of fabric on top of other layers of fabric. Alrighty. So there's my 2 flying geese for the first corner unit. You're going to make 4 of these units, so you're going to need 8 flying geese altogether. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to build the other part of this unit. And the first thing I need to do is sew one of the 2-inch background squares and one of the 2-inch blue squares, whatever color you're using, together. Alright, now that we're going to open and I'm going to press towards the darker fabric, which in this case is my blue. Give that a press. Alright, so as you probably already guessed, we're going to join the rectangle to the rectangle that we just created, just like this. Kind of like a 4-patch, except without having 4 patches. But you're going to form a square, basically. Okay, and we are going to press this, and I'm going to press it towards the solid blue rectangle. Just because you have more seams on this side, so if you push it or press it away from that, it'll lay flatter. If you can all get away with it, and no matter what kind of quilt you're making, if one piece has 3 or 4 seams and the other piece has 1 or none, then you always should press towards the one with less seams because you're going to get a flatter block and it'll come out nicer. Okay, so now we're going to take this and we are going to add the flying geese and our background square to this piece, and we're going to make our corner unit that's going to look like this. So the first thing I'm going to do is add 1 flying geese to here, and then I'm going to join these together, and then we'll put those 2 pieces together. Let's go ahead and do this. Again, I'm going to sew with my flying geese unit on top so I can make sure I don't lose my point. Came out really well. Give that a press. Okay. That part is done, so I'm going to join these together. And because I pressed this one this way, I'm going to press this one, even though it's breaking the, excuse me, press towards the dark, I'm going to press towards the light. So that way when I join these together, they're nesting up really well and they join together really nicely. Excuse me. Back to Ohio and ragweed season. Yay! Allergies. All right. Okay, there we go. Now, we're just going to join these together. And again, I'm going to sew with the flying geese on top so I can make sure I don't lose my point. So you're going to want to make 4 of these units, and then after you've made 4 and 4 of the other ones, and then the center, 4 of these units, 4 of these units, and then your center pinwheel, you'll have all the pieces you need to make this block. It's not a hard block, it's just a lot of pieces. But I think it's going to be really beautiful, so I'm excited to see what this is going to look like. Okay, now we're going to lay this out. This is going to be our center. This is going to be one of our middle pieces. You have a middle, 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 all the way around, and you're going to have 4 corners. Okay? So I'm going to grab all my other pieces that I've already made. There's a middle piece. I've got this piece up here. These 2 are already attached. I just need to add that. You just sew those together. And then I've got my whole bottom row already done. So we're going to go ahead and sew these together. And then we're going to sew this last piece onto here. And we will have a finished block. And it's going to be beautiful. I love stars. They're my favorite thing. So I'm very excited for this. Again, for the center, I'm going to sew with the pinwheel, or the, sorry, not the pinwheel, the thing that looks like a flying geese on top, so I don't cut off that point. The square and the square, that's what I was looking for. But it looks like a flying geese as you're looking at it, so. And that's another way you can make a square and a square if you don't like the flip corners method. You can make 2 flying geese and put them together. So that's an alternative option if you're looking for an alternative. Now the other side. And I'm going to put this row and the top row together, and then we'll press them both at the same time, and then we can put the whole block together. It just saves a little time if you can do all the sewing, then all the pressing, instead of pressing, sewing, pressing, sewing. Sometimes it doesn't work that way, it just depends on what you're working on, but I suggest when you're putting all these units together to chain piece all the different separate pieces, press all those, then add your pieces, then press all those to all 4. That'll save you quite a bit of time. Okay, now I'm going to add this block to the top row, and then we'll give these guys a press, and we'll put this block together. Okay, now got the bottom one already pressed, and that is pressed out on the bottom, so I'm going to press the top one out, and we're going to press the center one in, so that way when we put all 3 rows together they nest up. So let's go ahead and do that now. Now I've had people ask me why I backstitch when I do these seams up here. And you'll see it too when I do my rows. I backstitch. Now I know typically people don't backstitch in quilting, but here's the thing. I'm not making all these blocks in one day and sewing it together in a quilt in one day, right? So they're going to get moved around in my sewing room because I've got a lot of projects going on. And so I'm backstitching to make sure that my blocks don't come apart before I get this long-armed. As a long-arm quilter, I have seen people's blocks pop apart as it's getting long-armed because maybe they sat around for a while before they made the quilt top and they didn't realize that the threads had come loose, and they sewed the rows together and it didn't catch, and now I'm putting it on the long arm, which when you put a quilt on a long arm, it's stretched between rails, and now they've got a block that's popped open on the seam. And I try to fix those if I see them. Sometimes I don't see them until the whole quilt is on and already quilted and it pops apart. If I see it beforehand, I will fix it for the person. And you could fix it afterwards with hand sewing, but just a little tip, you know, if you're going to have your blocks not sewn together right away into a quilt, if you're gonna do an ongoing project, you may want to backstitch a little bit just to hold your blocks together. All right, there's what our block is gonna look like. So I'm gonna finish sewing this together and I'll come back and show it to you all finished, but now all you have to do is put your rows together and press it. All right, here is my Carpenter star all done. It's really pretty. I really, really love the way it came out. So we've done 9 blocks so far. The next one we're gonna do is called Birds in the Air. It's very, very similar. It's all half square triangles, and it's very similar to the way we constructed the basket block. So that one should be fairly easy. We've got about, we've got six more blocks to go, and half of those are pretty much just half square triangles, and making hourglass blocks and things like that. And then we've got a couple that are a little trickier. So we've got a drunkard's path left and a wagon wheel left to do. So I'm kind of putting those off to the end. I'm going to finish all the other easier ones first. All the techniques going forward for the blocks that are left, we've already done in one of these other blocks. So I'm going to zoom through them pretty quickly. I'm anxious to get to the end of this and get to those harder blocks and finish this quilt. I've got all my fabrics now. They've all arrived for the borders and the sashing and the binding. And I can't wait to finish this. I'm very, very excited to hand this over to the Historic Society and see it hanging in the Underground Railroad display. So gotta get this done. So I'll have videos up here for the last few blocks in the next couple weeks. And until then, stay safe and keep sewing. Bye.